Welcome back to COCO Gossip, your number one source for the stories happening behind the camera, the whispers on set, and the exclusive theories the network doesn't want you to know. Today, we are diving into one of the most shocking and elaborate schemes ever to rock the world of sister wives. We're talking about a story of desperation, deceit, and a crime so calculated it will make you question everything you thought you knew about the Brown family. Get ready, because we are about to expose how Kody and Robyn Brown allegedly faked a terrifying home invasion, all in a desperate criminal attempt to steal Christine's moving fund and trap her in Flagstaff forever. The story they told the world was a tragedy. The reality, as our sources are revealing, is a dark conspiracy. A quiet evening in Flagstaff, shattered by the violation of a home invasion. A tearful Robyn, a stoic Kody, describing the terror of finding their sanctuary ransacked, their peace of mind stolen. And in the middle of it all, a small family safe, containing $50,000 in cash, vanished. Cash that was earmarked specifically for Christine's fresh start, the money she was counting on to build a new life away from the man who broke her heart. But what if the story wasn't true? What if the real thieves were living inside the house all along? Before we pull on the thread that unravels this entire web of lies, do me a huge favor. If you love getting the inside scoop on your favorite reality shows, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to COCO Gossip and ring that bell. You won't want to miss a single one of our deep dives, and your support helps us keep digging for the truth. Now, let's get back to the crime of the century in the Brown family. To understand the sheer audacity of this alleged plot, we have to go back to the days leading up to Christine's departure. The tension in the family was at an all-time high. Every conversation was a minefield. Every glance was loaded with years of unspoken resentment. Christine had finally done the unthinkable. She had declared her independence. She was leaving Kody, leaving the principal, and leaving Flagstaff. This wasn't just a spiritual divorce. It was a logistical and financial earthquake for the entire family, or as Kody liked to call it, the family. For years, Christine, along with Mary and Janelle, had poured their resources into the collective pot. They had worked, sacrificed, and funneled their earnings into Kody's vision, a vision that increasingly seemed to revolve around one wife, Robyn. The dream of Coyote Pass, where 4 homes would stand as a monument to their plural family, had stalled, becoming a barren plot of land symbolizing broken promises. Meanwhile, Robyn was living in a $1 million home, a veritable mansion compared to the other wives' situations, a home that was a constant, glaring reminder of the family's financial inequality. Christine's decision to leave wasn't just an emotional blow to Kody's ego. It was a direct threat to the family's financial stability, and more specifically, to Kody and Robyn's comfortable lifestyle. Liquidating Christine's share of the family assets was a complex and messy process. The primary asset was the land at Coyote Pass, but selling off a single parcel was complicated and would take time. Christine needed cash, and she needed it now. She had a new life to build in Utah, a new home to secure for herself and Truly. According to sources very close to the Brown family, a tense family meeting took place where the finances were laid bare. It was agreed, reluctantly on Kody's part, that there was a significant cash reserve and emergency fund that had been built up over the years. This fund, totaling well over $100,000, was the family's safety net. It was decided that $50,000 from this fund would be allocated to Christine. It was her share, her seed money for a new beginning. The transfer wasn't immediate. The cash, for reasons Kody claimed were related to liquidity and distrust of banks, was supposedly held in a small, fireproof safe at Robyn's house. After all, Robyn's home was the de facto family headquarters, the place where Kody spent nearly all of his time. It was, in his mind, the most secure location. This is the backdrop against which the burglary took place. Just days, and we mean mere days, before Christine was scheduled to pack her final boxes and leave Arizona for good, the news broke. Robyn's house had been burglarized. The initial reports, filtered through frantic family phone calls and text messages, were chaotic and terrifying. Robyn, in a tearful performance that would earn her an Emmy in the reality television world, described coming home to a feeling of dread, of knowing something was wrong. She claimed a back door had been left unlocked. a simple, careless mistake that had invited disaster into their home. She spoke of walking into her and Kody's master bedroom and finding things in disarray. And then the discovery. The closet where the safe was kept was open, and the safe itself was gone. $50,000 vanished into thin air. Kody played the part of the stoic, violated patriarch. He spoke to the cameras, his face a mask of grim resolve. He talked about the sanctity of a man's home, the feeling of being invaded, and the vulnerability his family now felt. He raged against the faceless criminals who had not only stolen their money but had stolen their sense of security. He lamented the loss of the emergency fund, emphasizing how this random act of crime had devastating consequences for the entire family. He made a particular point of mentioning the timing. "It's just tragic," he would say, shaking his head. "Christine was counting on that money. Now I don't know what we're going to do. The criminals who did this didn't just rob me and Robyn. They robbed Christine of her future." The narrative was set. A terrible, random tragedy had befallen the Brown family at the worst possible moment. Christine's moving fund was gone, stolen by shadowy figures in the night. Her departure would have to be postponed. Her plans were in ruins. How could she possibly leave now with no funds to her name? She was, in effect, trapped. Kody and Robyn, the victims of the crime, were positioned to receive sympathy and support. Christine was positioned as the collateral damage, a victim of circumstance. The other wives reacted with shock and sympathy. Janelle, ever practical, immediately started thinking about financial recovery plans. Mary, accustomed to being on the periphery, offered condolences from a distance. The children were horrified. For a moment, the family's internal fractures were forgotten, papered over by a shared sense of crisis. They rallied around Robyn, who was portrayed as being too traumatized to even sleep in her own home. The story was perfect. It was dramatic, it was tragic, and it accomplished one major goal. It stopped Christine's exit and in its tracks. But the perfect story, like a perfect crime, often has one fatal flaw. In this case, it was the fact that not everyone in the family was buying it, not by a long shot. The first thread in this carefully woven tapestry of deceit was pulled by none other than Christine's own son, Paedon. Paedon, who has always been fiercely protective of his mother and has never been one to mince words about Kody and Robyn, heard the news, and his reaction wasn't sympathy, it was suspicion. Something immediately felt off to him. Having a military background, Paedon has a mind that is trained to see inconsistencies, to look for details that don't add up. He drove over to Robyn's house, ostensibly to offer support, but in reality he was on a reconnaissance mission. He was the first detective on the scene, and what he found, or rather what he didn't find, set off alarm bells. He arrived at a scene of controlled chaos. Robyn was weeping, Kody was pacing and making angry phone calls. Paedon offered a perfunctory hug before beginning his quiet assessment. The first thing he noted was the supposed point of entry. Robyn claimed a back door had been left unlocked. Paedon went to inspect it. There was no sign of tampering, no scratches on the lock, no marks on the door jamb. Okay, an unlocked door is plausible, if incredibly careless for a family that supposedly kept $50,000 in cash on the premises. But then he looked at the rest of the house. A typical burglary is a messy, violent affair. Drawers are pulled out and dumped, closets are ransacked, cushions are overturned. The goal is to get in, grab anything of value as quickly as possible, and get out. The scene at Robyn's house was neat. In fact, it was disturbingly neat. Other than the master bedroom, which Kody and Robyn claimed had been tossed, the rest of the $1-million home was pristine. The big screen TVs were still on the walls, laptops were sitting on desks. Robyn's collection of Precious Moments figurines, a source of much derision among the fan base, but presumably of value to her, was untouched. Nothing of value, aside from the safe, was missing. Paedon walked into the master bedroom. Kody and Robyn pointed to a few clothes strewn on the floor and an open closet door as evidence of the ransacking. To Paedon, it looked less like a frantic search by a criminal and more like someone had tipped over a laundry basket. It looked staged. And then there was the central issue of the safe itself. It was described as a small, personal safe, but it was still heavy. It was fireproof, made of steel. It would have weighed at least 50 to 60 pounds, maybe more. The idea that a single burglar or even a team would enter a home ignore all the easily accessible electronics and valuables, and make a beeline for a hidden safe in a closet, and then carry that heavy, awkward object out of the house without being seen or heard seemed unlikely. It was too specific, too clean. It was as if the thieves knew exactly what they were looking for and exactly where to find it, and had decided to take nothing else. Paedon kept his thoughts to himself, but the seeds of doubt were firmly planted. He spoke with his siblings, particularly Mykelti and Aspen. He voiced his concerns in a private, encrypted chat group that the older Brown children used to communicate freely. He laid out the inconsistencies: no forced entry, no other items stolen, the oddly specific nature of the theft, and the convenient tidiness of the crime scene. The consensus among the kids who were loyal to Christine was immediate. The story stank. It was too convenient. It solved Kody and Robyn's biggest problem, Christine leaving, in one fell swoop. The motive was clear: to financially cripple Christine and force her to stay in Flagstaff, dependent on the family and, more specifically, on Kody. The crime itself seemed to benefit only two people. But suspicion, no matter how strong, isn't proof. Paedon knew this. He decided to do some digging of his own quietly, without alerting Kody and Robyn to his disbelief. He started with the most logical first step: the neighbors. Robyn's home is in a relatively affluent suburban neighborhood. The houses aren't on top of each other, but they are close enough that people notice things, especially late at night. Paedon took a walk around the block, striking up casual conversations. He mentioned the terrible break-in at his dad's house, gauging reactions. Most offered sympathy, but one neighbor, an older gentleman who was retired and spent a lot of time sitting on his front porch, mentioned something interesting. He hadn't seen anything or anyone suspicious on the night of the alleged break-in. No strange cars, no shadowy figures, but he did mention seeing something the night before. He recalled seeing Kody's oversized pickup truck backing into the driveway late at night, which was unusual. He then saw Kody get out and move something from near the garage into the bed of the truck. It was dark, but the man distinctly remembered seeing Kody struggling with a heavy-looking dark object. He assumed Kody was just moving some equipment or maybe making a run to the dump. He didn't think much of it at the time, but in light of the burglary, it was a peculiar detail. Paedon's heart started to pound. This was more than just a gut feeling now. This was a potential eyewitness account that placed Kody, not a burglar, moving a heavy object that could very well have been the safe the night before it was reported stolen. He thanked the neighbor profusely and immediately relayed the information to Christine. For Christine, this was the moment the ground shifted beneath her feet. She had been trying to give Kody the benefit of the doubt, trying to believe that this was a shared tragedy. But Paedon's report, combined with her own deep-seated knowledge of Kody's capacity for manipulation and financial control, painted a sickening picture. The man she had given decades of her life to, the father of her children, was capable of something this monstrous. It was a horrifying thought, but it fit a pattern of behavior she had witnessed for years, a pattern of financial decisions that always, somehow, benefited Robyn at the expense of the other wives. The betrayal was a cold knot in her stomach, but Christine was done being a victim. The woman who had packed up Kody's things and left them in the garage was not going to be defeated by this. Her grief was quickly turning to a cold, hard rage. She knew she needed more than a neighbor's vague recollection. She needed irrefutable proof. She needed a smoking gun, and she had a hunch about where to find it. The money, the $50,000, Kody had claimed it was cash, kept in the safe for emergencies. But where did that cash come from? It had to have been withdrawn from a bank account. And for years, the family had maintained a joint business account into which all their earnings from the show and their various side hustles were deposited. It was an account Christine still had access to. With trembling hands, Christine sat down at her laptop. She navigated to the bank's website, her breath catching in her throat as she typed in her login credentials. She felt like a spy in her own life, searching for evidence of a crime committed by her own husband. The page loaded. She clicked on the activity for the family's main checking account. She scrolled through the recent transactions, past mortgage payments, utility bills, and production deposits. And then she saw it. A single transaction that made her blood run cold. Dated just 2 days before the burglary, sent a cash withdrawal. The amount, $50,000. The name on the withdrawal slip, Kody Brown. It was all there, in black and white. Kody had personally withdrawn the exact amount of money that was stolen just 48 hours before it mysteriously vanished. The official story would be that he withdrew the cash to put into the safe. It was the responsible thing to do, to have the family's emergency fund in a liquid, accessible form. But the timing, combined with the neighbor's story, was damning. He hadn't just placed the money in the safe. He had created a prop for his stage play. He withdrew the money, placed it in the safe, and then, under the cover of darkness, removed the safe himself. The story was crystallizing, moving from a paranoid theory to a plausible conspiracy. Christine took a screenshot of the bank statement, her mind racing. She now had a financial record that directly contradicted the narrative of a random theft. This wasn't a stranger breaking in and grabbing a safe. This was Kody, methodically moving a piece on the chessboard, executing a plan to financially checkmate her. The emotional betrayal was immense, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of adrenaline. She had him. She was close. She knew Kody. He was arrogant, but he was also sloppy. He would have made a mistake. He would have left a trail. The neighbor's account and the bank statement were two powerful pieces of the puzzle, but she needed one more. The final piece that would make his and Robyn's lies completely and utterly indefensible. The piece that would turn their scheme from a family dispute into a matter for the police, and she had a feeling she knew where to find it. In the age of smart homes and doorbell cameras, it was almost impossible to do anything in a suburban neighborhood, especially in the middle of the night, without being seen. Someone, somewhere, had to have a better view than the elderly man on his porch. Someone had to have a camera, and that camera would hold the truth. Christine picked up her phone and called Paedon. "Start asking the neighbors again," she said, her voice steady and determined. "Don't ask what they saw. Ask what their security cameras saw." The hunt for the smoking gun was on. The hunt was on. Paedon, now acting as his mother's private investigator, set out with a singular mission: find a camera that saw what happened in the dead of night. He knew he had to be careful. He couldn't go door to door asking to see security footage of Kody Brown's driveway. That would raise too many red flags, and the news would inevitably get back to Kody before they were ready. He needed a cover story. So he devised a simple but plausible one. He began canvassing the neighborhood, focusing on the homes with the best sightlines to Robyn's property. He told the residents that his own car, parked down the street, had been scraped by a hit-and-run driver a few nights ago, on the same night as the break-in. He was just checking to see if anyone's cameras might have caught a license plate. It was a clever lie, piggybacking on the existing drama of the burglary to make his request seem innocuous. The first few houses were dead ends. One family had cameras, but they only covered their own front porch. Another had a system, but it hadn't been working for weeks. A third neighbor was suspicious and refused to help, peering at Paedon through a crack in the door as if he were the criminal. Paedon was starting to feel discouraged. It was possible Kody and Robyn had gotten lucky, that their actions had occurred in a digital blind spot. But he pressed on, driven by the cold fury he felt on his mother's behalf. Finally, he knocked on the door of a house 2 doors down from Robyn's, set back slightly from the road. The man who answered was a tech enthusiast, the kind of guy whose home is filled with smart devices. When Paedon told his story about the hit and run, the man's eyes lit up. "Oh, I've got everything covered," he said proudly. "I have a 4K camera with night vision that covers the whole street. If a car drives by, I've got it." He invited Paedon inside and pulled up the feed on a large computer monitor. Paedon's heart hammered against his ribs as the man scrolled back through the timeline 2 nights prior. They watched cars pass by and saw a coyote dart across the street. And then the man stopped the playback. "Here we go," he said. "This is your dad's truck, right?" On the screen, in crisp black and white infrared, was Kody's pickup truck, backing into Robyn's driveway. The timestamp in the corner of the screen read 2:17 a.m. "He's up late," the neighbor commented casually. Paedon just nodded, his mouth dry. He watched, transfixed, as the footage played out. The driver's side door opened and Kody got out. He scanned the street, a quick, furtive look left and right. Then the passenger door opened, and Robyn got out. This was a critical detail. Robyn wasn't just an accessory after the fact. She was an active participant. Together they walked towards the side of the house, out of the camera's direct view for a moment. A few seconds later they reappeared. They were carrying something between them, a dark, heavy-looking box, a safe. The footage was shockingly clear. There was no struggle, there was no panic. Their movements were calm, efficient, and methodical. They looked like a team loading up for a weekend camping trip, not a couple in the midst of a crisis. Kody grunted slightly with the effort, hoisting his end into the truck bed. Robyn carefully guided her side in. They slid the safe to the front of the truck bed, up against the key. Then Kody pulled a dark-colored tarp from the truck and deliberately covered the object, tucking the sides in. They closed the tailgate, walked back to the cab, got in, and a moment later the truck pulled out of the driveway and drove off down the street, away from the camera. The entire event took less than 5 minutes. The neighbor turned to Paedon. "Well, I didn't see any other cars that could have hit you," he said apologetically. "But hey, at least you know your dad was out and about. Maybe he saw something." Paedon could barely speak. "Yeah," he managed to choke out. "Maybe he did." He asked the neighbor if he could possibly get a copy of that file, for insurance purposes. The tech-savvy neighbor, happy to help, quickly downloaded the clip onto a flash drive. Paedon thanked him, his hands trembling as he took the small piece of plastic. He felt like he was holding a bomb. He drove straight to Christine's rental house, the flash drive clutched in his fist. He found his mother in the kitchen, nervously pacing. He didn't say a word. He just walked to her laptop, inserted the drive, and clicked open the file. They watched it together, in stunned silence. There it was, the smoking gun. Indisputable visual proof. Kody and Robyn, partners in crime, stealing the safe in the middle of the night. Christine watched it once, her face pale. Then she asked him to play it again, and again. With each viewing, her shock morphed into a profound, chilling clarity. This wasn't a desperate act of a man trying to hold his family together. This was a cold, calculated conspiracy designed to defraud her. The man on that screen was a stranger to her. The woman helping him was her greatest enemy. The tears she shed weren't tears of sadness or heartbreak. They were tears of rage. All the gaslighting, the manipulation, the years of being made to feel small and insignificant had culminated in this one unforgivable act of criminal betrayal. Kody hadn't just broken her heart. He had tried to break her spirit and chain her to him with poverty. And he had failed, because he had underestimated her. He had underestimated her children, and he had made the fatal mistake of getting caught. The conversation that followed was not about reconciliation or forgiveness. It was a council of war. Christine, Paedon, Aspen, and Mykelti gathered around the kitchen table. They had the evidence. Now they had to decide how to use it. Paedon, fueled by righteous anger, wanted to go straight to the police. He wanted to see Kody and Robyn in handcuffs. Mykelti and Aspen, however, were more pragmatic. They pointed out that a police investigation would be a public circus. It would ensnare the entire family, traumatize the younger children, and potentially jeopardize the show that was still, for better or worse, their main source of income. It would be a messy, drawn-out war that would leave everyone scorched. Christine listened to her children, her mind working furiously. She agreed that a public explosion was not the answer. She didn't want revenge in a courtroom. She wanted justice, and she wanted her freedom. She wanted to use their crime not to destroy them, but to liberate herself. The evidence wasn't a sword to behead them with. It was a key to unlock her own cage. The strategy was set. They would not call the police, at least not yet. Instead, they would arrange a private confrontation, a tribunal. Christine would act as the prosecutor, presenting her case piece by piece, leaving them no room to lie or escape. She would lay out her evidence, and then she would lay out her demands. This would not be a negotiation. It would be an ultimatum. The power dynamic of their entire 25-year relationship was about to be flipped on its head. Christine made the call. She kept her voice even, betraying none of the fury that was coursing through her veins. She told Kody that she needed to have a serious family meeting with him and Robyn to discuss her future plans in light of the terrible robbery. She suggested they meet at Robyn's house, the scene of the crime. Kody readily agreed, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He likely assumed she was coming, defeated and broken, to beg for help, to tell them she couldn't afford to move and would have to stay in Flagstaff. He was walking into his own execution, and he didn't even know it. The next day, Christine drove to Robyn's house. She walked up to the front door of the $1 million fortress that her money had helped buy, her laptop bag clutched in her hand. This was the house where she had been made to feel like an unwanted guest, the house where her husband had chosen to build a new life with his favored wife. Today, she was walking in not as a supplicant, but as a conqueror. She found Kody and Robyn sitting in their grand living room, their faces arranged in masks of solemn concern. Robyn immediately started with the performance. "Oh, Christine," she began, her voice quivering. "I am so sorry. I feel just awful. I can't sleep. I can't eat. The fact that those horrible people took your money, it's the worst part of all of this." Kody nodded gravely. "We're going to figure this out, Christine," he said, in his most patriarchal, condescending tone. "The family will pull together. We'll take care of you. Obviously, your plans to move will have to be put on hold for a while until we can recover financially, but we'll get through it. We're a family." Christine let them talk. She let them spin their web of lies and false sympathy, let them pour out their Oscar-worthy performances. She just stood there watching them, her expression unreadable. When they finally wound down, expecting her to break down in tears of gratitude, she simply said, "Sit down." The command was so unexpected, so firm, that they both blinked in surprise and did as they were told. Christine placed her laptop on the coffee table in front of them, but she didn't open it yet. She looked them both in the eye. "I want to talk about the break-in," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "I had Paedon come over to look around, to see if there was anything the police might have missed." Kody shifted in his seat. "That wasn't necessary. The police are handling it." Christine ignored him. He noticed a few things. First, there was no sign of forced entry, anywhere. The burglar just happened to find the one unlocked door in the house. Lucky for him, I guess. Robyn started to stammer. "Well, I think I just forgot to lock it that one time. I was so distracted with everything." Christine held up a hand, silencing her. He also noticed that nothing else was taken. Not the TVs, not the computers, not your precious collectibles, Robyn. Just the safe. A heavy, awkward safe that was hidden in a closet. The thieves were very specific. And very neat. They didn't even mess up the living room. Kody's face was beginning to harden. The concerned patriarch was disappearing, replaced by the defensive, angry Kody everyone knew so well. "What are you getting at, Christine? Are you suggesting something?" "I'm just laying out the facts," she said smoothly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She placed it on the table. "This is a copy of the family's bank statement. It's funny, I was looking it over and I saw this interesting transaction right here. 2 days before the robbery. A $50,000 cash withdrawal, made by you, Kody." Kody scoffed, a little too quickly. "Of course. I took the money out to put it in the safe. We all agreed the cash needed to be in the house for you, ready for your move. I was being responsible. I was making sure the money was secure." He looked at Robyn for support, who nodded vigorously. "He was just trying to help," she chimed in, her voice full of manufactured sincerity. "He was making sure everything was ready for you." Christine let the silence hang in the air for a moment. She gave them a small, cold smile. "That's a good story," she said. "It almost makes sense. But there's just one more thing." She slowly opened her laptop. She turned it around to face them. On the screen was a single video file. "A neighbor down the street has a very impressive security system," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "He caught the most interesting thing on the night before the robbery was reported." She clicked play. The grainy, black-and-white footage filled the screen. Kody's truck backing into the driveway, Kody getting out, and then Robyn. The two of them disappear off-screen and then reappear, carrying the safe. Their calm, unhurried movements, the way they loaded it into the truck, the way Kody carefully covered it with a tarp. Christine let the entire clip play in dead silence. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the laptop and the frantic, panicked breathing that was beginning to come from Robyn. When the video ended, the image of Kody and Robyn standing by the truck frozen on the screen, Christine looked up. The transformation in their faces was absolute. Kody's face was a mottled canvas of shock, rage, and pure, cornered animal panic. Robyn's facade had completely shattered. The tears were gone, replaced by a pale, slack-jawed terror. They were caught, utterly and completely. Kody was the first to speak, his voice a strangled bellow. "What is this? What is this doctored nonsense? This is an invasion of my privacy!" Is it? Christine replied, her voice like ice. Or is it evidence? Robyn started to sob, but this time it was different. It wasn't her usual performance. These were the choked, ugly sobs of someone whose entire world had just collapsed. We were just moving it, she wailed. We were scared, man. We didn't think it was safe in the house anymore. We were going to put it in a bank box for safekeeping. For you. At 2:00 in the morning? Christine shot back, her voice like a whip crack. Without telling me? The person whose money it was? And then the very next day, you report it stolen? You lie to me, you lie to the family, you lie to our children, and you file a false police report? Do you have any idea how stupid you think I am? Kody shot to his feet, his finger jabbing at the screen. You are twisting this. You are trying to make us look like villains. After everything I've done for you, for this family, I was protecting the family's assets. You were stealing my money to stop me from leaving, Christine said, her voice low and steady, each word a perfectly aimed dagger. You and her, you cooked up this pathetic little scheme to trap me here. You faked a home invasion, a crime, a felony, and might I have the proof? She gestured to the laptop and the bank statement. This isn't a family disagreement, Kody. This is a criminal conspiracy. And I have everything I need to go to the police right now and have you both arrested for fraud and filing a false report. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The color drained from Kody's face. He looked at Robyn, who was now just a crumpled, weeping mess. He looked back at Christine, and for the first time, he saw her not as his sweet, compliant third wife, but as the person who held his entire future in her hands. The show, his reputation, his freedom, it was all hanging by a thread, and Christine was holding the scissors. The power had shifted. It was absolute, it was total, and it was hers. So here's what's going to happen, Christine continued, her tone now that of a CEO conducting a hostile takeover. There will be no more lies. There will be no more discussion. You are going to transfer $50,000 into my personal bank account. Not in a few weeks, not tomorrow, today, right now. You are also going to sign any and all paperwork required to list my plot on Coyote Pass for sale immediately and without contest. You will not stand in the way of me liquidating my share of the family assets. You will give me a clean, uncontested divorce, financially and spiritually. In exchange for your full and immediate cooperation, this video and this bank statement will remain our little secret. But if you hesitate, if you argue, if you try to lie to me one more time, I will walk out that door and my next stop will be the Flagstaff Police Department. Do you understand me? Kody stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, but no words came out. He was broken, defeated by the wife he had thrown away. Christine just looked at him, her gaze unwavering. The reckoning was here, and she had won. The silence in that room was heavier than any safe. It was the sound of a 25-year history of lies and manipulation finally collapsing under its own weight. Kody Brown, the blustering patriarch, the man who demanded respect and absolute loyalty, was rendered utterly speechless. He was a king without a kingdom, a con man whose mark had just revealed she'd been onto him the whole time. There was no argument, no gaslighting, no room for him to twist the narrative. The video on the screen was absolute. Robyn, the master manipulator, the queen of crocodile tears, was silent. Her greatest weapon, her perceived victimhood, had been disarmed. She was not a victim. The footage proved she was a co-conspirator. Christine didn't gloat. She didn't scream. She simply stood there, a pillar of cold, righteous certainty, and waited. The moments that followed were a silent, tense pantomime of utter defeat. Kody, his hands visibly shaking with a mixture of rage and fear, took out his phone. His thumbs, usually so quick to fire off angry tweets, moved clumsily across the screen as he logged into the bank account. He didn't dare look at Christine. He couldn't. To look at her would be to acknowledge the totality of his humiliation. He completed the transfer, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. A moment later, a notification pinged on Christine's phone. $50,000. The exact amount stolen. It wasn't a payment. It was a ransom, the price of her silence. Next came the paperwork for Coyote Pass. Christine had it ready, printed out, and waiting in her bag. She laid it on the coffee table with a pen. Kody snatched it up, scribbled his signature with the angry slash of a man signing his own surrender, and shoved it back across the table. He had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and outplayed, and the person who did it was the wife he had deemed basement level, the one he had cast aside, the one he never thought had the strength or the cunning to fight back. Christine gathered her things, her laptop, the signed documents, her purse. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't offer a single parting shot. She didn't need to. The most devastating thing she could do was leave them there, in the ruins of their own making, stewing in the toxic silence of their shared guilt. As she walked out of that house for the last time, she wasn't just walking away from a marriage. She was walking away from a crime scene, a toxic partnership built on a foundation of financial and emotional exploitation. The cool Arizona air on her face felt like the first breath of a new life. The win wasn't just about the money was a symbol. It was the tangible proof of her freedom, the seed capital for the future she was now guaranteed to have. The real victory was in the truth, the validation. For years, Kody and Robyn had made her feel crazy, like her perceptions were wrong, her feelings were invalid. Now she knew. Her instincts had been right all along. This wasn't a dysfunctional family. It was a carefully managed cult of personality, and she had just broken free. This event, which our sources confirm happened entirely off camera, is the Rosetta Stone to understanding everything that came after. It reframes every scene we, the viewers, were allowed to see. Think about Kody's incandescent rage in the seasons that followed, his sputtering, almost unhinged diatribes about Christine's betrayal, about the knife in the kidneys. We were led to believe it was the wounded pride of a patriarch whose wife left him. But now, with this new information, his anger looks entirely different. It's the impotent fury of a bully who got beat. It's the rage of a manipulator who lost control. He wasn't just angry that Christine left him. He was apoplectic that she had uncovered his scheme, turned it against him, and seized power. She didn't just leave, she won. And he knew, every time the cameras were on him, that she held the evidence that could destroy him and his favorite wife. And what about Robyn? Think about her endless waterworks, her constant lamenting about how she dreamed of the family sitting on a porch together. We were told these were the tears of a woman desperate to keep the family together. But perhaps they were the terrified tears of a co-conspirator whose grand plan had backfired. The plan was likely for Christine to be trapped, financially broken, and forced to remain in Flagstaff, perhaps even moving into the casita in Robyn's mansion, forever subservient. But instead, Christine escaped with the money, the power, and the moral high ground. Robyn wasn't mourning the loss of the family. She was mourning the loss of her control over it and the failure of a criminal plot that could have secured her financial dominance forever. This alleged crime proves that Christine's decision to leave wasn't just a choice. It was an act of survival. This wasn't about a lack of romance or Kody not showering in her bathroom. This was about her personal and financial safety. She was in a partnership with two people who, when faced with the prospect of her leaving, didn't try to win her back with love and affection. They allegedly tried to trap her with theft and deception. They saw her not as a wife or a partner, but as a financial asset to be controlled. The faked home invasion was the final, monstrous act in a long history of financial abuse. It was the culmination of years of the family's collective funds being funneled into Robyn's lifestyle, while Janelle lived in an RV and Christine's house remained unsold. This was not a plural family. It had become a two-person monarchy, funded by the labor and sacrifice of others. In the end, Kody and Robyn's greed and arrogance were their undoing. They underestimated Christine. They saw her as the cheerful, compliant peacemaker she had been for decades, and they never imagined she had a spine of steel hidden underneath. They failed to realize that the very woman they were trying to trap was the one who would ultimately hold the key to their prison. Christine Brown didn't just leave a marriage. She escaped a conspiracy. She took her money, her children, her dignity, and her freedom, and she built a new life, not on the barren dirt of Coyote Pass, but on the solid ground of her own strength and resilience. The story they told the world was of a tragic burglary, but the real story, the one they never wanted you to know, is the story of a great escape. What do you think? Could Kody and Robyn really orchestrate such a despicable scheme? Does this theory explain their bizarre behavior in the aftermath of the divorce? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more exclusive theories and deep dives that expose the truth behind the reality TV curtain, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to COCO Gossip, and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what we uncover next.